So yeah, the last time we spoke, I believe it was at Shucks, right? With the
Yeah.
online convention, which was very very fun.
Ah, glad you enjoyed it.
Thank you. So thank you for having me for that. Like, it feels good to play board games with people online. Like, I have been doing it with my friends, but it's just nice to, I don't know, do it as often as I can. So I just wanted to say thanks for having me aboard for that.
You're quite welcome. Those panels came out really well. I've been kind of in the process of chopping them up to get them on YouTube in the next month or so. But yeah,
Nice.
the Champion of the Wild one was a lot of fun to just sit in the background and listen along to that.
And for listeners who may not be aware, both of you are from Shut Up, Sit Down, which I think is not. I think it is one of the best board game channels on YouTube for sure.
Oh, thank you very much.
From a writing standpoint, from production standpoint, I think it's absolutely fantastic. And while I would like to talk about board games at some point, I'm actually just kind of curious to know about what your interests are outside of gaming before we just jump into any of that. So I don't know if either of you would like to start. If you would,
Wow.
what are you into outside of you know, the board gaming, the even just the general gaming sphere?
This isn't being recorded, right?
Well, yeah, sure, it's not.
I'm
Yeah.
joking. Yeah, Quinns, I think your hobbies have potentially been less impacted than yeah.
Yeah, well, I felt really guilty all throughout this year because I'm kind of a sort of weird creature that's evolved to stay indoors at all times. So I feel very lucky. I do a lot of reading, I watch a lot of TV, and I can do both of those. And I can play video games as well. And that's like
Okay.
the sort of holy trifecta of me. So, the idea of a disaster where I have to stay indoors for a year is like, I've been training for this my entire life.
And even now, has the fatigue not settled in? Because I also thought I was equipped for this, and I found out I'm actually, I guess, more extroverted than I thought. Because it turns out I did kind of need after a certain point. Now, you're still doing pretty good though?
I think
all things considered.
I think Matt will give you a very different answer to this to me, but yeah, I'm one of those annoying people who I find myself quite nervous about the prospect of life getting back to speed and sort of living life sort of pre-COVID.
Sure.
I've just gotten used to this. I feel like this is the end of a sort of like grim movie where the credits could roll over me, implying that I do this forever now, and that would be fine.
Sure.
Oh God, no! I
But
mean,
Matt has spent more time in Tabletop Simulator than I have over the last year, though. So
Yeah.
that's really going to sap someone's will to live.
I think like I had a
God.
stranger run into the start of it because we were more concerned in our household that we were kind of at risk in a bigger way than maybe we were. So we've been more careful over the past year than a lot of people have, and so really, different places have had going inside, patches of going inside, patches of going outside. I've basically just been inside for like a year, and I'm
Yeah, same
kind
here.
of getting bored of it now. Very much, we'll come back to board game stuff in a bit, but yeah, very much getting bored of playing things online rather than in person. But I'm the same, really. Actually, I'm a weird. I'm a weird one in the fact that I assumed I'd be okay. Like initially, I was like, "Oh, this is fine." Like, and I just sort of knuckled down and just carried on with what I was doing, and realized actually, a lot of the time, I'm quite happy to be just left on my own, tinkering around with things indefinitely. But I started to realize after a while that actually it's like, because prior to this, I'd actually stopped working at home and started renting a desk in a kind of shared working space because I found that working from home was sort of doing my head in a bit. And I now kind of know why, and it's because it's like without any distractions, I will just not stop working. It's all I do, which is very
Gotcha.
productive. But yeah, but I had a bunch of interesting hobbies before lockdown, and now, I mean, I'm becoming very boring, like very boring. The other day,
What were your interesting hobbies before the disaster struck?
yeah, I was tidying up my sort of room in here the other day, and I found my climbing shoes, and I was like, oh yeah, I used to do bouldering quite frequently, and it's like, yeah, now
okay.
now I repaired the oven, the other day, and I got quite excited about going down into the cellar and getting my bags of reusable silica gel and putting them all into the oven for about 6 to 8 hours. Got very excited by that, just to see the quantity of liquid and moisture you can cook out of those babies, so you can put them back in the box in the cellar with the GameCube, keep it toasty and dry.
Life's greatest thrills there, yeah.
It genuinely interests me now, though. I've become such, like, I think I'm somebody, like, one of the many things I've discovered over the past year is that lockdown has led me to discover, along with loads of other people who I know, that they have ADHD. But I'm somebody who, for whom boredom is death. I cannot be bored. But my reaction to that is just, I've become absolutely fascinated with so much really boring stuff over the past 6 months, because there's just nothing going on.
I mean, listen, you got to do what you got to do. I think for me, I thought I was a Quinns. I really did. I thought, okay. I mean, in the beginning, we had no idea what was also how long this was going to last, right? So I was like, okay, a month, easy. 2 months, sure. And then it just sort of went on and on and on. And I'm the type of person where this will give you a lot of information about me. I have this whole Word document where, and I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but you two are not familiar with the freakishness of my personality. It's like a thing where I have to like watch or play a video game a new video game once a month, do this once a month, like watch a new show once a month, and that's like my that's what keeps me motivated is hitting my goals for the year. And I found myself finishing the year's goals in about a couple months, and I was like, fuck, now what? So that's when I was like, oh shit, no, this is a marathon, and I really need to like think about how am I gonna go through all this, especially because for me, board gaming was a huge part of what I was doing pre-COVID. Like I've actually only played Tabletop Simulator once, and it was all right. I've actually been finding the most success with Board Game Arena. I don't know if you two have dabbled with that.
Yeah, that's my favorite as well.
It's, I don't know, yeah, you don't get the sort of obvious feel of like, moving shit around and stuff, but the interface and just also teaching new people how to play is just, I cannot. Tabletop is, it's like if I have to like think about how to click a fucking card, it's so much trouble in Tabletop. Whereas in Board Game Arena, this is elegant, and yeah, you're gonna lose a little bit of the experience. But for me, I'd rather have intuitive, just easy to use interface especially for newcomers than Tabletop Simulator.
Completely. We also landed on the conclusion that Board Game Arena is the best, even though it's just a website that sort of runs ugly games for you. But I will say that fiddling in Tabletop Simulator, and especially playing with Matt and Tom, who have been streaming a lot of board games using it, there is a kind of nice cyborg nature that you can get into with Tabletop Simulator. Like, for example, you don't click and drag cubes if you like gain a cube. You don't drag a cube all across the table. You Control-C, Control-V, and you like duplicate and delete components. And if you're us, you enlarge and shrink components for comedic effect. Once you get the hotkeys in Tabletop Simulator down, I'm not going to say it's well, it is less bad and it is more fun.
I'm definitely in the Stockholm Syndrome part now for Tabletop Simulator. I've become really familiar with how to use it and all the keyboard shortcuts and how to kind of whip around it quite quickly. And I still don't like it very much, but it has charmed me. It's just, it does a really bad job of being a replacement for board games and being a replacement for a physical space. So in a way, I guess, I was thinking about this the other day, actually. I was thinking in a way it's kind of like Tabletop Simulator in the same way that like Goat Simulator is a game about goats. It's like, it's not, it's bonkers. Like the way you do everything in that is insane. Like the fact that it makes kind of sense to just quickly whip around the table and shuffle everyone's cards just for the hell of it, because you can, why not, and no one would mind that. Can you imagine leaning over and shuffling someone's deck in real life? It would just be so I don't know, like there's a lot about it which is strange and kind of lovable, but the thing I'm finding, and it sounds like it might be similar for you, is that for me, in a way, like board games are quite therapeutic. They're a way I slow my brain down. They're a way I stop myself from looking at my phone and doing things. And like there's definitely been times when I've been playing board games with Quinns and I've like kind of still been in super speedy brain mode and been checking my phone, and he's had to be like, hey, what you like, can you put your phone away? Like we're playing a game.
And
well, I have no memory of doing that, but that does sound like the kind of asshole behavior that I would do.
No, not at all. Like,
if that's asshole behavior, I'm an asshole, because for me it's like no phones. Not no phones, but you know what I mean. Like keep, unless it's an emergency.
Well, the thing about phones,
I'm the same.
Yeah. Phones do have like I will get really boring about this, but phones do have a kind of toxic energy where even if someone else is checking their phone and I'm trying to have a phone's free time, we don't yet have like the words for this as a society, but there is a kind of bleed of that anxiety and onlineness that comes out of your phone, even if I can't see the screen.
Yeah. And it's just
and also it's like divided attention, right? It's like, you know, you if you're on your phone, you know, this is not like a call out, man. Like, how dare you use your phone in this one anecdote?
I'm cancelled. I'm done. You know, like
you're
roast me.
Yeah. Fuck you for using my phone. No, I just as a, you know, very, you know, kindly but firmly at if I have a board game, you know, meetup or whatever, it's like, hey, you know, if someone takes out a phone, I'm like, maybe like the first time I'm like, oh, that's okay, you just check. But if there's a difference between checking a text and, you know, actively like scrolling or looking, I'm like, hey, just let's just focus on the game, you know.
I get,
and
like
I've never had anybody go like be like offended, or everyone's like, oh yeah, sure, like, you know. I think it's just once everyone's kind of on the same page about, yeah, let's all just sort of, you know, join in the experience together and just kind of, you know, be in this moment, which sounds very fucking like I'm a grandpa, but but you know, you guys know what I'm talking about.
Oh no, 100%.
Yeah, live in the moment. Yeah, you know, it's, you know, it for me it makes the experience that much better, and also I don't have to explain like the same rule 10 fucking times.
Yeah, I mean that's so it. It's like, you know, I just think everyone arrives, I get out this big bowl and say, everyone put your mobile phone in this bowl, and then everyone take a different mobile phone. And then no, it's
and then you got 2 minutes. 2 minutes to do whatever you want.
Do whatever you want. It's actually for my own good. It's like I do get annoyed as well when I'm playing games and someone's checking in the phone, but I kind of get why they're doing it in a way. It's usually if they're checking their phone because they're bored, it's like, get what are you doing? Get the hell out! Like, just go away. But for me, it's like I know that it's like my brain and the internet just interlink in a way that I want that kind of constant feedback. And if there's a gap in the moment where there's not something interesting happening, if my brain is going at the wrong speed, I will just be immediately on like looking at Twitter, looking at something, looking at things. And it's like, actually, like for me, the reason I'm playing board games in the first place is to try and like put the brakes on and actually have something where it's like slow down and do something at a less computery pace. So
right.
The thing I find a lot with playing on Tabletop Simulator stuff, because you don't have that social contract being policed, I get so distracted, like sitting around a table and having somebody explain how to play a game to you, like in real life, and teach you a game and pointing at the components and showing you the cards. That's really engaging, right? But having to just look at this static screen while somebody explains rules to you, it's so easy just to find your mind wandering. And I feel like I'm just really rude a lot of the time, like because I'm not able to focus. I can't give like Tabletop Simulator or any of these things, apart from maybe Board Game Arena because it's crunchy and fast enough, my kind of complete attention, my mind just wanders off, and I'm really missing that kind of absolute focus in Wooden Sheep or something.
Gotcha,
I'll tell you one thing that the industry is kind of missing that this year has made clear. Like over the last 12 months, you know, Shut Up and Sit Down doesn't usually cover one-player board games, but we have this year and it's cool, and turns out there's lots of, you know, especially today, most board games, people might not know this, but if a board game has a one-player mode included, some publishers say that increases sales as much as 20 or 25%.
Wow, really?
Yeah, it's bonkers. Okay. But yeah, it's why every Kickstarter board game has a one-player mode now. It doesn't matter if it's good, because, you know, that's not the point with Kickstarter.
But as long as you have it.
Yeah, as long as you have it, that'll increase sales because a lot of people out there play games one player, and that's cool. But what this year has shown me is that while there's a wealth of really good one-player games, Matt did a lovely review of a game called Under Falling Skies that I'd encourage people to check out. Also on Shut Up and Sit Down, there was a review of a wonderful one-player RPG called 1,000-Year-Old Vampire. Goodness me. Someone, did you know there are single-player role-playing games?
I did not know this. No.
Oh, it's a whole world, yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, I'd encourage anyone. I'm not trying to plug myself. I just want more people to know about 1,000-Year-Old Vampire because it's such a fun thing to do in lockdown.
Yeah.
But the thing that I've really felt that COVID landed and we were not prepared for is I wish more games were designed for basically play by email, because that's a great feature of Board Game Arena where you can take as long as you want in your turn, and then especially some games, if you pick the right one on Board Game Arena, don't even have many turns, but the turns are very thought provoking. So
sure,
play by email is great, but not many games are designed to be played by email. Not many games are designed, with that in mind, those design constraints. And I would love to see more games like that. That would have been such a nice thing to have this year.
I don't think we were able to plan in advance for the demand of that, but I see where you're coming from. That is. I have actually never tried playing by email. It's interesting.
I mean, so the game that I would point everyone towards, which is a very weird online game, is called Solium Infernum. It's a PC game first and foremost, but all the players are lords of hell. Sort of you're trying to take territory and you're casting spells at each other. But because that game is designed to be played literally by email in that case, but what I'm talking about is remote play where turns might take days apart, might happen days apart. You can do so much cool and interesting stuff to do with really giving players hours to think about their moves.
Oh, okay. I see.
Lots of
no, that's cool. Two friends of mine were they were doing that with Twilight Imperium.
Oh,
not
wow.
Twilight Imperium. Twilight Struggle.
Okay,
Twilight Struggle.
Yes.
Yeah, no, not Imperium. Struggle.
Yeah, too much time with Imperium, you lose your mind.
God, can you imagine? Yeah, no, Twilight Struggle. They were playing a one-on-one certain match. Oh, you can only play one-on-one. A match of that, and that is interesting. I might have to give that a shot. Is there a board game that you think is a good fit for that?
Ooh, we were talking about playing. I mean, City of the Big Shoulders is very dry, but we were talking about doing that sort of slow.
I ended up playing quite a lot of Terra Mystica on Board Game Arena with strangers on a kind of asynchronous basis, of just logging in every day and having a few games and just playing a move. That works quite well for just because it's such an abstract strategy game that you can literally just be sat in front of a table and go, okay, well, what's going on? Okay, well, this is the best move. Okay, done. Next move.
Sure. Speaking of Board Game Arena, again, this will give you a lot of insight into who I am. A goal that I have for myself for COVID is to play every game on the website at least once.
What?
Yeah.
How many are there?
Do you want to know how many I have left?
Yeah.
Take a guess. Take a guess how many I have left.
Can we know how many there were?
So let's take a look. Considering they keep adding games, keep that in mind. Let me take a look here at how many roughly games there are.
Didn't Board Game Arena announce in December that they were going to do a new game every day? Because that would be... or they were going to release a new game every day. I think because that must have been such a funny thing for you to be like, oh, I was so close!
Oh, no. I take into account new games that are released. Let's see. All games... Let's see. This is about... I'm just sort of giving you a rough estimate as I'm scrolling down here. Let's say around 200-something games. Different games on the website.
All right.
That's a very rough estimate.
I think you've got 34 left.
Okay.
Were you going to say 34? Is that...
I was going to say 50, but... I mean, on the one hand, like you, I definitely, think that someone has smashed this. On the other hand, I know that there's a lot of dross on Board Game Arena that no one would ever want to play. So maybe
listen, there is.
Maybe I'll go 60 then. I think you have 60 games left to play.
22. 22 games left. You were close, Matt, actually, but
not bad.
What have you discovered? You got to tell us all about these games.
Oh, listen, I've even considered maybe doing a whole video on just what are the best new games, worst games. Let me go over.
Oh, you must.
I don't like to shit on games, but I'll shit on a game. One of the most miserable games on the website. Oh, let me find.
Is it Beloved? Is it Beloved?
Oh, I hope it's Beloved. I don't think Beloved is on the site. What's Beloved?
No, I just mean like, is it a game that like people really?
Oh, game that is. I was like, that sounds like a title of a game. Okay,
It does.
no.
It does. Reiner Knizia's
this
Beloved. You've never played it? Or...
A lot of auctioning. Let's see. What was this game called? And I feel bad because I don't think, because a lot of games on the site that are bad are like, like barely any people have played it. It's just kind of like, hey, they kind of self-publish it and threw it on there. But there was a game. Oh yes, it was Ice Cold Ice Hockey. I don't know. Do you know this game? Do you know what this is?
No, I can't say we've had the pleasure.
Okay, well, never play it. It's a 2-player game where you're playing, quote unquote, hockey with cards, and you're just hitting a puck back and forth. It's like you play a card and the puck moves, moves towards a goal.
I'm into it so far.
Every time you take a shot, you roll a die, and it never gets in the goal ever. The odds are extremely unfair, and it's like you can do all the little passing and all the things you want. It's not gonna matter if the die is like a fucking 1 out of 20 roll to get it in the goal. No joke, fell asleep like in the middle of playing it, and I had to wake myself. I was like, oh shit, like, because he was like, it's your turn. I was like, yep, it's my turn. That was very bad.
So you playing these with friends or with strangers?
Friends. There are a couple of friends who are game for, like, you know what? They'll play, and they'll play anything. Like, they know that some of these are really bad, and that's kind of part of the fun of it, right? It's like, let's open up this game and see if it's any good. Like, especially if it's something we never heard of. Let me be a little more positive. Let me scroll through here and find some stuff that was like surprisingly like good, or like I never heard of this, and I'm seeing a lot of bad ones. Okay, maybe I shouldn't shit on some of these games because they're like, no one's played them. It's like punching really, really down, like it's like,
yeah, that's kind of where we end up with a lot of this stuff. Is it's like,
yeah,
hey, here's a game you've never heard of. It's bad.
It's like bad.
It means
and
like,
no one's played it, and now we're gonna make sure no one plays it.
It's like literally everyone else in the world goes, okay, it doesn't really mean anything to me, apart from maybe the designer who just gets really upset, and it's like, what's the point? It's like, oh yeah, okay.
Matt, what was that ice hockey game that you tried last year, and we might try and get some more coverage on this? It's called Trick Shot or Slap Shot or
yes,
something?
I think Trick Shot. It's by the people who make the Mowbray-styled board game with the Atlantis. The name I can never remember because it's slightly generic.
I will Google this because I want to get some ice hockey positivity.
Sure, and I would love to hear about a good ice hockey game.
It's very hot this year.
Yeah, it's called Trick Shot, and it looks cool, and it's pretty.
It is cool. It's kind of, it reminded me a little bit of kind of ice hockey. I was going to say Blood Bowl, but I'm like, well, Blood Bowl is technically, I'm not really big on sports. But no, it had a nice flow to it. It actually kind of had a sense of like having players that had different roles, and like actually, having players that shut them down, and
really nice miniatures as well.
Yeah, no, I thought it was pretty
cool.
neat. That was one of my pre-virus games.
Yeah, playing a good hockey game, I think, could sort of cleanse my palate. Here's a game that I was like, I didn't know anything about it, and I thought it was very cute. It's called Illustory. Have you heard of this?
No. It's
a Japanese design. And are you familiar with the word chain game? Is it called Shiratori?
Oh, that old thing where they used to play with the cards.
Wait. No. It's a word game where it's like in Japan, and you say a word, and then the next word has to start with the end of the previous word. That sort of game. But if you end in that game, if you end with like a sound, it ends or whatever. So Illustory is just like very cute, like sort of art cards, and all you're doing is you're playing a card and you're saying a phrase or a word or whatever. So it could be like, if you're boring, let's say it just has a boy, you could say boy or whatever. So then the next card the next player plays has to start with either an O or a Y. But the fun of it is just making bullshit reasons for why this card works as an O. Like, so it'd be like a boy with an angry face. You could make up some like description for the card that starts with an O to justify you playing the card, and everybody votes on it whether it's like bullshit or not. It's very cute, very funny, just very simple concept. The art is great. And
this is on Board Game Arena?
This is on Board Game Arena. Like, I'd say the only thing is there's not that many cards. So if you play it, I've played it a couple times, and you start to see the same cards. But what's funny is, like, if you play it just, like, the generic way of, like, if it says pizza, you just write pizza, nobody likes that. Like, that's not why it's fun. It's like, how can I take this and make everybody laugh, right? Or at least make this creative or whatever, instead of just going for what's literally on the card.
Do you like games or any games where the idea is basically just trying to get away with something that you probably shouldn't be able to get away with, and convincing everyone that it's okay? One of my favorite kind of made up games I ever played was with my brother and one of his friends years ago, where we played Rude Scrabble. Where Rude Scrabble, the only rule was you could only play a word if it sounded rude. And it meant that you could play made up words. Like you didn't have to play real words. It's just that you'd have to play a word, and then if people were like, nah, then you'd have to convince them why it was rude.
Do you have an example?
Honestly, it was such a long time ago. Now we're talking like 15 years. I have no example, but it might be that you might have a word like scrumble, and you might be like, oh, a little scrumble. You can have a scrumble around.
Man, if you do that Cockney accent, everything sounds rude.
I wish have a bit of a scrumble. Yeah,
that's pretty great. Look at that. We should record the whole podcast like this. Just go
about like this. Have a bit of a scrumble with the lads. Yeah.
It's a little bit of a scramble. It's not illegal.
You know what game? There are two games on the site that. I said at the top of this we were going to talk about board games, and then we
can still turn the car around.
No. Let's keep going books. For now.
I like silica bags. Options.
I mean, we could go back to silica bags, but
do you want to talk about moisture? Because I can talk about. No, I'm serious. I currently have. The crystals in those silica bags.
Yeah.
I've bought a sack of those, and not just for fun either. To deal with the damp problem in my flat, I have had to put deposits, like sort of caches of these silica crystals in every corner of every cupboard in my flat to prevent them, because the building is like 25 stories tall and increasingly wet.
Sure.
And I don't like water is getting into it, more and more water every day. And one day it might fall down, but me and my silica crystals are standing in the way of that happening.
I was just like, is this some kind of like fucking? Is this a thing in your country with silica? Like, why are you both? Like, I was just.
We have to prop up the silica industry.
Yeah. I see.
No, England is really damp though.
It's really damp, yeah. So like Quinns lives in a fish tank basically, with a beautiful view. Whereas I just have like a little cellar space underground where I can keep things, but it got real flooded a few years ago and some electronics got real busted. So I kind of went a bit like crazy on the let's keep things dry. But yeah, no, we get quite excited about really, really dull things. And it's hard to get it out of your system when you just live with like your other half, because my wife doesn't want to hear me talk about the things that I'm interested in. So they just sort of bubble up in you and you end up becoming a terrifying enthusiast of quite dull stuff. And like buying a power drill and being like, oh, I love this power drill.
I mean,
what are some boring things that you like? Because that's really, if you've got Matt and I on a podcast together, if you want some real niche conversations, that's the area we should be talking.
So interesting. No, let's see. Boring things. I mean, I don't know.
You're just too interesting. That's
it's more like, it almost circles back. Like everybody like plays a video game. Like everybody, like that's almost boring amongst like nerdy people, or like So I don't like. What is something that's genuinely not interesting.
On the subject of this, not to drag it back to board games, but when I'm asking you about your favorite things, there is a Japanese card game called My Favorite Things, which I'm desperate to get picked up by a publisher because it's got the best hook ever.
What is
basically
the
a super simple? It's a super simple card game, like where you've got cards that. The way the game works, you've got 6 cards in your hand, numbered 1 to 6, and then you play what's called a trick-taking game, which is basically if somebody plays the highest number into the cards on the table, then you take all the cards. But rather than using the numbers are actually covered up. And before the game starts, everyone picks their favorite thing. So if I were to ask you two, what is your favorite category of thing? Matt, what would you say?
Machines.
Okay, Matt has chosen machines. And Sungwon?
Just any category of anything.
Yes. What's your favorite thing?
Junk food.
What jumps into your head?
Oh, just
junk food.
Okay,
junk food. Great.
Yeah.
So Matt would then take these 6 cards and write his 6 favorite machines, and then cover up the number. And someone would write down 6 favorite junk foods. But then we'd all pass our hands of cards around. So I might receive Matt's cards, and I'm looking at 6 machines, and I then, in order to play the game well, have to guess what order they are in Matt's head.
Oh, that's great. Okay.
And then only after you play the game and you reveal, like what everything is and stuff. Yeah, it's absolutely awesome. Came in a beautiful tiny box in Japan, and I'm just waiting for a Western publisher to pick it up and do a big print run so we can cover it.
I want to get all the board games out of my system, but before, let me answer your question. Okay, what's something that no one else finds interesting? COVID has sort of made me realize things about myself, and one thing I have is a lot of encyclopedic knowledge about different dumb things, and Lego. I don't know how familiar you are with Legos. I'm sure you know what Legos are, but I have very specific knowledge about different themes and sets of when, and even I could talk about pieces, to that level of boringness. And
what is the worst Lego piece?
That's an easy question. Come on, give him a harder one.
The worst. No, let me think about it. The worst Lego piece. This isn't a great answer, but one of the most annoying pieces is the 1x1 flat. It's just.
Good answer.
Once you put it on something, it's almost impossible to take off. What was your answer?
I'm not an expert, but I was going to say I was going to say the long little flat one, but I guess it would be called a 2x1 flat, which is pretty because I just remember those, and you're like, they're just purely, style and fashion over function. The idea of having a Lego piece that you put on something, which then prevents you from putting any more Lego pieces on it, to me, is the antithesis of what Lego's about.
Yeah, it's like the death of creativity in a small piece of plastic.
But just imagine the nightmare. You've got one. You got the floor of a Lego thing, and you put a little 1x1 flat in the middle, and then you have to take it off. That's a nightmare.
You describing that has created a sense memory of me getting those Lego pieces underneath my fingernail when I was a kid, and it really hurting. So
I have an encyclopedic. I wouldn't say encyclopedic, but I can talk about that for a long period of time, and I only have one other friend who's actually editing this. What up, Jay? He's like, yeah, I know, we're losers. So I would say that'd be my answer. I've never met anyone who I can sort of relate to on this level. Are you familiar with Sesame Street?
Yeah.
So, you know how some people have encyclopedic knowledge about the Muppets? I have encyclopedic knowledge about Sesame Street because as a kid, I grew up with a lot of the 80s and 90s tapes and books and whatever. And so I have this weird, very a lot of knowledge about it that never comes up because no one remembers any of that. Even if it were the Muppets, I would have more to talk about. So I would say maybe that might qualify for your question.
That's good. I mean, why choose the Muppets? The for all ages when you can choose Sesame Street. I mean, that's definitely a way to have a really niche interest is pick something for kids and then learn about it in a way that only adults can.
Well, no,
You can't really choose.
I don't.
You
Let
can't
me
choose, though, do you? You know.
let me stress this. I don't study Sesame Street lore now.
It sounds like you study it. It
No.
sounds like
No. It's more that it got ingrained in my head. It's like it's stuck in my head. I mean, I don't know if you know this about me, but like Disney's Peter Pan, I literally can quote the entire thing from start to finish.
I've seen people say this online. I've seen the tweet going around like, "Oh, name a movie you can quote from start to finish," and I'm like, "What?" I mean, like as a kid, I watched Terminator 2 easily 8 or 9 times, but the idea of being able to quote it is truly
Not
horrifying.
to toot my own horn, but I can also do the music cues, and I can describe what's going on screen. Like, if
So you could, in the event of a power cut, do the entire movie for some friends or victims who happen to be present.
there's video evidence of me. I've done it twice on YouTube now. Feel free to look this up if you want afterwards. Like, they don't tell me what scene. They just pull up a random scene, and then I act out the video before it actually plays. So like I say everything before the line hits. I'm not looking at the screen. I'd say right here is when this character goes into the it's very frightening. So
That's a party trick.
That's
a party trick.
It actually, yeah, like it's funny. I think that first video was like I was playing Everdell for the first time, and we were just setting up, and then Peter Pan came up, and I was like, oh, by the way, like my wife already knew this, but my friend was, I was like, oh, by the way, did you know I can like quote that from at any point? Like I know that entire movie. They're like, no way. I was like, pull up any scene right now. And then she decided to record it, and then it just sort of turned into that. And now it's this embarrassing thing that everybody knows about me. So I will say, with Sesame Street lore, I have not studied Sesame Street lore. It's
Sesame Street lore.
It's just stuck in my head now.
While you were studying the blade, I was studying
I
Elmo.
studied the Grouch. Yeah.
I was really fond of Elmo as a kid. My first email address was like elmo999@yahoo.co.uk when I was on Yahoo Chat before MS. I was like, I really loved Elmo until it was like, until well past it was kind of cool for a child to like Elmo. Must have been in my early teenager years, and I was still like, yeah, Elmo's great. And I'm kind of disappointed in myself that I ever stopped thinking that. I definitely went through a phase. It was like, whatever. But now as an adult, I'm like, yeah, Elmo's great. He's just a little red ball of endless positivity.
Well, I think that happens with a lot of things. Like in middle school, a lot of people will be like, what's that stupid thing? I don't know what that is. Like Pokemon or something like that. For people my age, it's like, oh, Pokemon, well, that was dumb. And then when like a college circled around, it's like, yeah, I fucking love Pokemon. It's like a thing where, you think it's embarrassing to like things when you're in middle school or age, and then you just circle back, actually liking things is fine. In fact, liking things is cool.
My whole childhood, as someone who played like tons and tons of video games, was lucky enough, I should say, to play a load of video games when I was a kid. I was a big geek, and I always felt so absolutely heartbroken when I would come into school and all the kids suddenly, for like that, one day of the year, everyone had got a video game and they were all playing it and talking about it, but it was never one that I had played. So Pokemon, that was a big one.
I see.
All the kids were suddenly playing Pokemon, and I was like, oh, video game, I can do this. Oh, no, I can't. And I was still a loser because I was playing like whatever import JRPG while everyone else was getting into Pokemon.
What were you playing at the time that people were playing Pokemon?
We got my SNES chip so that I could play American games, because America got all of the JRPGs before.
Oh wow!
Europe.
I mean, you had it made then. Like, I didn't get a chance to play all of that stuff until emulation. I never had a SNES, so I in my early teens just went bonkers and basically played and completed every and any SNES RPG that was good. But yeah. My Pokemon thing was like a bit like an alternate reality thing, and the fact that I just happened to be, I lived up in the north of England, and I happened to be visiting Guildford where I grew up, and I went back and I went to game randomly, and they just had Pokemon in there, and I was like, oh, my friend had mentioned it was in a magazine and he said it was going to be good, so I was like, oh. So I grabbed a copy and I told him I had it, and then he was like, what the hell, get me one as well. So I had to like get all of my money together as a child to like get a second copy and borrow some money from my mum so I could do it. But then I went back and it was like, yeah, it was just an incredible game. But there was this really weird thing where the store had clearly just imported some from America or something, because it then just wasn't available for like a year. And it was this really weird thing of playing this game and becoming addicted to this game, and literally no one else was playing it. Until eventually, like, a child down the road got it and wanted to fight me, and I just got out my level 100 Charizard and stood there very blithely as I just crushed a child's dreams with a link.
I've realised that we should probably clarify for the good folks listening to this that when we were young, Europe received all video games something like, what was it, like 9 months after America?
At least.
Like, it was bonkers. Like, it was just, it's so unfair. Like, America was 9 months into the future of video games at all times.
Yeah,
I'm still angry
and
about that.
And even when at one point I think they made it so like console launches would happen around the same time, but then it would just
You
mean
didn't
that,
get
like,
any games.
Oh,
it just meant there were like
shit.
hardly any games for like ages.
And that's already kind of a problem when the console launches anyway. Like, you have like 5 games. You guys had like nothing then. It was like, enjoy your DVD player.
Enjoy your mysterious platform game made in France where the protagonist is a topless blob. Yeah.
In a way, it was quite cool though, because it meant like you did have this shared experience at least, and the fact that like there were so few games to play that you really did rinse the ones you had, and everyone had played the same ones. And it meant you have this like really weird cultural fondness for games that weren't that good, but everyone thought they were just because there was nothing else. The N64, I think, was prime for that. Like, everyone, well, not everyone, but a lot of people remember Shadows of the Empire on the N64, which by all accounts was a really quite shit game. But the first level of it, where you got to do the Hoth thing and fly around an 8080 and make it crash, was brilliant. So the amount of people I knew who had that game, which cost like, probably in today's money, like £100, and would just play the first level, yeah, we were suckers, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be like, you know, you would save up all your money and it's like, okay, buy a game, hope it's good, because if not, you're not getting another game for a while probably. And you just sort of treasured the games that you sort of managed to get your hands on. Now, I'm just gonna come out and ask this. I'm getting the. Are either of you how you say fucking weebs? Are you? I'm getting maybe the sense. I don't know. Am I wrong here?
What's a weeb? Is that just
Quinns knows what it is. Are you? So you're a weeb. So you're a weeb then.
Matt, a weeb is short for weeaboo is I hope I get this right. Someone
I've seen
who
the word,
is
but yeah.
unfashionably obsessed with. Is it Japan or
I would say
like if you're really into K-pop.
I would say definitely like anime, like anime, manga, Japanese video games, yeah, that sort of thing.
Well, we can all talk anime because Matt and I are both fans. But in terms of my sort of experience with Japan, I did spend a few months in Japan trying to relocate my entire games writing career over there and learn Japanese. Turns out I failed at learning Japanese and I failed at getting any work while I was over there. So I was very, very lonely. Came home.
I see.
That's
big weeb energy there. So before we jump in, I mean I'm gonna say I noticed Quinns your Twitter avatar, and I was like,
oh yeah. I presumably you know what it's from.
Fooly Cooly, correct?
Yes, that is a reference between me and my wife because now what's it, Nauta? That's the
I forget the name, but
yes, him drinking that sour drink, trying to become a man, is just like got strong young Quinns energy. Fully. Weirdly, I got into Fully Cooly before I watched Neon Genesis Evangelion. My wife had to be like, "This is ridiculous. You need to sit down and watch this," and I did, and it was good to fine, depending on the episode. But yeah, Fully Cooly is just genius. I find a lot of the art that I really, really adore has lots to say, but is nonetheless really funny when it says it.
Yeah, that's a good one for that. Matt, are you an anime fan?
I've kind of gone a bit of a full circle. When I was younger, I used to like play like all of the JRPG stuff and really consume a ton of the video game side of things. Never really the anime. Then as I got older, I got a little bit fed up with the kind of constant fan service creepiness in that stuff, especially in video games, where I'd just be like, oh, I'm not in the mood for this now, I just want to play a good game. And now I'm gotten quite into some anime over the past couple of years, and I'm now willing to put up with a bit of that nonsense in exchange
if you watch
really
good anime,
fun stories.
If you watch good anime, there's less of that nonsense. But I would.
Exactly. Like,
I would love to hear some of your. What have you been watching? Both of you, or watch, or yeah.
I liked on Netflix. Is it Dodo di
Doro?
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed that.
I enjoyed to watch it. I've read the first volume of the manga, but I haven't seen it yet.
It was
a lot
of fun, very stylish,
it's got
just
great
ridiculous.
soundtrack. Yeah.
And I think the first thing I saw was years ago, obviously Cowboy Bebop. Then I didn't watch any anime again for years. A couple of years ago, I got really into Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood and just watched all of that in quite a short amount of time, and thought that was one of the best things I've ever seen. And that was kind of one of these things of being like, oh wow, this is amazing. And then watching a lot of Avatar: The Last Airbender.
It's great. I mean,
so good.
Yeah, I've actually weirdly I'm watching Korra, the sort of sequel series, like, you know, for the first time now, and I was really ready to like it as much, if not more, than Avatar. But you know what? I like it less, even though the action sequences are just absolutely fabulous.
I watched the first season, wasn't a fan. I heard it's I'm talking about Korra, by the way. Not I like Avatar. Although I didn't like the first season of Avatar either. But 2 and 3 I thought were fantastic.
Yeah.
But Korra, I mean it's Korra.
And the last thing I've been watching is I just kind of caught up with. I think I finished watching the end of series 3 of Attack on Titan, which is again very enjoyable. Although I can understand the plot, I won't go into it, but the plot points it starts to raise towards the end. I'm a bit like, are you okay? But it's just this thing of going, oh gosh, I hope you're equipped to deal with what you're about to try and deal with in a good way. But cool, flying around on strings and stabbing things in the neck, very exciting. And I really like the way it'll be like, oh, here's someone being literally chewed to death by a giant naked person, and then cut to here's a diagram of a horse in between episode breaks. So I've been really enjoying that a lot as well.
How about you, Quinns? Was it a sort of you returned to anime, or have you been a dirty weeb this whole time, like me? Because for me, it never stopped. So I'm curious.
Did stop. I had breaks. I watched a lot when I was a teenager, and a games writer called Richard Cobbett used to do these little anime capsule reviews, he would watch a season of anime and then he would write a 1-sentence review. And he had hundreds, if not thousands, of them, and I used them a lot. That was a really lovely resource. Then I kind of fell off.
Familiar? Is that a website?
Richard Cobbett now writes for video games. He used to write about them.
I see.
He's British.
Gotcha.
I forget who's working for it at the minute, but he's great. I almost said as far as I know there. I don't know why I said that. I mean, I guess we never really know if anyone's not.
That's a whole different conversation.
Yep.
Yeah.
But when I got together with my wife, she also liked anime and introduced me to some series that she considered like essential viewing, and I'm so grateful she did. Like, Magical Girl Madoka, Paranoia Agent, few other things. That was great. And then this year, I'll tell you something that's not good, but I nonetheless watched and has a sort of crossover appeal between board games and anime. Netflix has a series called Kakaguri Compulsive Gambler.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Have you seen that one?
No, but I have friends who've seen it. I'm familiar with it, but I have not seen it.
Yes. It's
very horny looking.
It's super horny.
Yeah.
The protagonist is a girl who essentially gets aroused when she gambles at a school for gamblers.
Sure.
Which is kind of a 2-class school because you go into debt with other students if you lose games with them, and then you become their slave. Super randy, which is British for horny. But lots of the episodes are like sort of have tentpole games that are played. And sometimes, but not always, the sort of like, it's a lot of like internal monologues of players going, oh, but if they do this move, then I'll do this. And then someone does a move and he goes, what? But that doesn't make any sense. And anyway, sometimes those scenes are some of the best depictions of gambling and gaming in an anime I've seen. Oh, I'll tell you what though, I haven't seen that actual modern board game anime. What's it?
Is it?
You'll know what I'm talking about.
Are you talking about the one where they play it in a club?
Yes, it's a bunch of girls.
Yeah, I haven't seen that either.
Club.
I heard it was okay. Let me hit you with 2 recommendations, both of you.
Yep.
So
Pen at the ready.
Fuck it, I don't know the name. Kakerugui. Anyway, I haven't seen you. I'm gonna offer, and I haven't seen it. I'm gonna tell you this show is 10 times better. And if you like high stakes gambling, have you seen Kaiji?
No.
It's good. So Kaiji.
Okay.
Kaiji. It's about, imagine high stakes gambling, as in like you stake your life in the games. It's a masterful show. It's got 2 seasons. It's also got a spin-off, which is great, but I would say first watch the first 2 seasons. And I'll say like the first little arc is just about a high stakes gambling thing with rock paper scissors cards, and it's high stakes rock paper scissors, but it's very well done, and then it just gets more and more bonkers as it goes. Extremely high tension, extremely like emotional. Definitely. I'm sure your partner will. If it seems like they have good taste, from what I'm hearing, with Madoka and what else did you
Paranoia Agent? Yeah,
they've probably already seen it, Kaiji, or if not, they've heard of it. And so I would say watch that. It's great. And then here's one that's my personal favorite, and I'm all people on the podcast are like, oh my god, we know, but for you guys, Chihaya Furu, and I'm gonna write in the chat.
I was gonna say, because I'm writing these down, but there's no way I'm gonna find anything while googling them.
Yeah.
that's not how I would have spelled that at all.
No.
Chihaya Furu is about it's a Japanese card game where basically you have every time I try to explain this, it sounds like the most boring thing. Bear with me. You have poetry cards in front of you, and
this is what I thought you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, the game is called Karuta.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a very sort of niche old Japanese game that's, I think because Chihaya Furu has become more popular, but even in Japan was not popular. It was very sort of niche, and it's a game where a reader will read a poetry verse, and then you have to hit a card with the sort of the rest of that verse faster than the other person. It's almost like a sports reflex game, and I've seen it played in person, and it's fascinating, but it sounds not interesting at all. It's my favorite anime of all time. It is just heartwarming and extremely exciting to watch despite the premise. So I would say, especially because I think you guys are familiar with like games, or maybe card games or board games maybe. So if these two, I think, are essential viewing for anybody, but also
interesting games.
Kaiji. Listen, just watch Kaiji.
I'm thinking now, like this is really, like, I don't read many books because I'm not very patient. But if you've not read it and you're interested in games, then I think it's essential reading to read Ian M. Banks' The Player of Games. You familiar with that?
No, what is it?
Oh, it's so good. It's a science fiction book which really just completely changed the way I looked at games and also other mediums as well. But effectively, it's about a chap from a very futuristic culture whereby everyone can live for as long as they want and do whatever they want, and they're completely safe. And so everyone just lives these leisure lives infinitely. Who just is really, really good at playing games and has learned how to play all of the different games in the known galaxy and is very good at a lot of them, and a champion in a few of them. And because of that, he basically gets scoped out by the equivalent of the space CIA to...
Wait, what is the title?
The Player of Games.
The Player of Games, okay.
The gist is he gets basically convinced to go to the outskirts of the galaxy where they've discovered the outskirts of the universe, where they've discovered a new species that they've never really made contact with, where the entire species and their social structure is defined by a game that they play like once every 10 years. And how well you do in this game defines exactly where you are in society. And it's about him basically going to this place and playing this game. And it's so good.
Yeah.
I mean, all of the M. Banks like sci-fi is pretty great, but that one in particular is pretty essential for game players, I think.
I love that
Really fun
concept,
thing about
so I'm definitely interested. But go ahead, sorry.
Oh, excuse me. The really fun thing about that book is after you've read it, if you know someone else has read it, you can ask them what the game looks like in their head.
Oh.
And I've never encountered two people who say the same thing. Like, everyone has a very clear image because about half the book is describing the games that happen.
Interesting.
And yet it has enough sort of flex and abstractness that the image everyone has in their head of what the game is. I talked to someone and it was like, oh yeah, the game board is the size of a warehouse. And I was like, what?
Interesting.
Oh yeah, I thought it was massive. Yeah, I thought it was huge.
I thought it was about the size of like half a tennis court.
Huh. Okay.
Okay, yeah, no, definitely bigger in my brain.
Also, the pieces that that you pick up and sometimes hold, to me, are about 9 inches tall and shaped like jelly babies.
I gotta read this.
Very
I
specific.
gotta read this damn book.
It's great. It's like it's a little heavy going straight away because of the fact that it's part of his culture series. And the thing about the culture series is there's no particular order to it. Well, there is, but you can read any of them in any order. But the first one you go into is a little bit bewildering at first, just because it kind of drops you into a universe, and it does explain stuff as it goes. But it's one of those things where the more of them you've read, the easier it is to get into more of them because you're going in with a lot of knowledge about the different factions and groups and stuff like that. But it's not as a writer, he's very grounded and was very grounded and very down to earth. So it's quite easy to get into it. It's just initially you might just be like, what's going on? What's the floating robot talking about?
Oh, I forgot about the robot. The robot's so good.
Yeah, the robot's great. Yeah, it's real good, real good. And I'm also thinking about, because talking about gambling, I'm thinking about that terrifying gambling card game we learned that you did a video on for the Card Games That Don't Suck series.
Bourrée.
Bourrée.
Oh,
that's
God. I wish that I had more like regular 52 card deck card games in my life, because it feels so cool shuffling and dealing cards. And what have you got? Oh, you got a king. That's cool. I love cards.
No, cards are great. And
we were playing.
Go ahead.
Sorry,
did you just expire?
No, sorry. I was just gonna say we were playing for such low stakes in that game, and it was still terrifying.
Oh yeah.
And the game is called what?
It's called Bourrée. So that's spelt. I'll put this in Slack like you did. But for the people at home, not Slack, Discord. But for the people at home, it's spelled Bourre. But it is a card game that's very popular in the NBA. And I like to joke that's because as soon as you play it, you will realize how baller it is. But what it is that I'm not going to get into the details because that's dull to listen to. But basically, imagine a game like poker where you're trying to win money in a hand. But if you decide that you're in that hand, if you screw up, you don't just fail to win what's in the pot. You lose an amount of money equal to the pot. So people are used to card games where it's like, you have big pots and small pots. Oh, it's a big pot. I'll go in. Bourrée is, it's a big pot. So if I go in, I'd better be really sure, because it's not just, I might win $20. It's I could lose $20, and then it rolls over. So if you have a round where, oh no, I've lost $20, the next round is going to be an even bigger pot. So I will also say, if you go to the Wikipedia page of this game, I think that it talks about how there was one player in the NBA who left a gun in another player's locker based on a Bourrée debt that they created while playing a game.
It's
great game.
Terrifying. It's terrifying because it's just you're so used to things like this of being like, oh, I got a pretty good hand this round. Yeah, I'll go in, and then putting a bit of money and being in. And it's like it's very cheap in that game to get in. It's just that if you don't win at least one hand, then yeah. But as well, the fact when people are going around, you think I got a pretty good hand. You go in, and then everyone else goes in as well, and then you're like, well, hang on a minute. There's 6 of us. There's 5 hands. I only have to win one hand to not go bust and go in.
Yeah.
But the odds just go off a cliff. It's so good.
I
but
really want to.
terrifying.
I really want to play this now. You have.
But we were playing with like a bet being like 10p,
Sure,
like
sure.
as an individual thing, like, and it's still like quite quickly got up to being like, oh, I didn't win this round, so I have to put £6 in now. Like, it's just being like the idea of playing it for like money.
That's
like,
why it's
I'm
popular in the NBA, I guess. It's just
Yeah, right?
they got the money to spend. Damn. Now, before we kind of finish up, I do like to give the guests sort of like an opportunity. If both of you or either of you have a topic you'd like to bring up, maybe not moisture again, maybe not unless you really want to, a topic or a question for me, I like to give the guests an opportunity to. If not, don't worry about it. I got a few more things. I got like 1 or 2 things left that I do want to cover before we wrap up. But if there's anything that comes to mind, obviously no pressure.
I mean, I do have something, but it's kind of. It's a bit dark, but it kind of circles a lot of stuff we've been talking about. So you talked about you like to set yourself goals to sort of to encourage you to participate in your hobbies.
Sure.
And I've already mentioned that. I don't know. Matt's mentioned being distracted while playing Tabletopia because he's in a digital space, and I've mentioned not wanting to spend time on my phone. Here's a thing that I've just been so aware of during lockdown, which is, like Matt says, it's really difficult to open a book and read it. And I have to set myself goals. I have the goal of reading 30 pages of anything a day, which is like, 25, 30 minutes of reading, but usually I get distracted, so it's like 45 minutes or whatever. And yet I find that whenever I actually do that, like, I always walk away from that experience happier. And yet, it's such a fight for me to pick up a book instead of my phone, even though after 30 minutes with my phone, I will be sadder and more angry. So
That's good
my
to know
body,
that. Because like I always think that like you're good at reading naturally, and I have the same thing, and I just never persevere. So maybe I should just persevere more.
I think you touch on a very good sort of. I'm always telling this to people, whether it's a creative pursuit or just for fun. Like I've honestly done this with like giving this. Not advice, but kind of advice to people, like, because it's always worked for me. This is why I set goals for myself, because, I think in a lot of times, usually you're just kind of like tired, and you're like, I don't know what I want to do. I'll just go on YouTube or something. I don't know, I'll just check Twitter, which is always the worst possible option. So setting goals for yourself, and it's like, okay, it kind of is a weird sort of like, it sets, what do you call it? Not discipline, but kind of like a discipline, right? It's like, okay, like, I know I can read this many pages, right? And I know that if I do start doing it, I will enjoy it. So you just sort of set goals for yourself. And it honestly makes things much more accessible. Like, I had a friend who was in a creative rut. I was like, listen, set a realistic goal for yourself. Like, in a week, like, it does not have to be hard at all. Like, I know in a week, you can do it, or he knows in a week, or I know, we were like, hey, like, you can spend 30 minutes on a creative project you have. Because he was just having, especially with COVID, it was, a lot of people are, struggling with depression and that sort of thing, and like really the motivation to do shit. And so it's like, I know you can do 30 minutes, and you know that. And if you can't, that's fine. Set an even lower goal. But 30 minutes a week is definitely doable. And if you do more than 30 minutes, that's fantastic. But I think he was stressing out, like, I feel like I'm not spending enough time. And it's really just getting worse and worse on, my mental health. And I'm like, you know what? That's why I say set a very realistic, easy goal for yourself. And 30 minutes a week is better than nothing. It's better than nothing.
That's so what it is. Because when you tell people, I set myself goals for reading or whatever, like, that makes it sound like you're adding more stress to your life. But it's not true. If I don't set any goals, I will spend all day on my phone, or I'll be less organized, which means I end a day more frustrated and angry and tired than if I just gave myself the nudge to do stuff that I know will make me happy. It's like, I never want to be that person telling people to exercise, but, it's the same thing of if you set a goal to, like move your body once in a while, that stops being a chore very quickly. It's cool to hear you talk about stuff.
And like I said, I think the key is set a realistic goal, because I think people set goals that like that are just not achievable for them, and it's like, you're gonna fail and you're gonna feel bad about it, and then you're gonna stop. It's like, so you have to set something that you can do, that you can do, And then if you do it, again, that's better than nothing, right? It's, hey, you either didn't do any work on your creative thing, or you didn't read at all, or you read a little bit. And it's something very important that you touched on. I always, everyone I've sort of, because I think another person was like, oh, I want to like, watch shows with my significant other, but I never feel like it. I'm like, I know you like watching stuff with your significant other. Just watch one episode. Just one episode. And if you want to watch more than one. But if you only watch one, because, I think their significant other was like, kind of feeling like, oh, I want to watch stuff, but they never want to watch stuff. But I know you like watching stuff with them. And I know it's hard to feel motivated to do this. So the key that you're touching on is that when you start doing it, you're like, oh, yeah, I fucking love this. Oh, yeah, I love watching shows.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah, I love, working on my creative thing or reading books or, stuff. It's just getting yourself to do it, which is way, way harder than it sounds, because, especially in these times. So I think that's a great sort of thing, because I have, definitely lived by that philosophy as well. It's, for me, I mean, it kind of sort of goes with my sort of, I have very obsessive sort of qualities about my personality, but with that, I think it use channeling that in a way that's kind of a little more productive for me, and sort of exposing myself to more interesting things has been a good sort of a net gain for me, I guess.
I know what you mean, and I think it's same, especially when you're having rough days. You just think, okay, well my plan for today is to bake a cake. And that's like that's maybe as far as I go. But then you have other things where it's like, okay, then you end up baking like 6 cakes. That's the other thing. I'd be getting into moisture and baking. But
I do remember in not remember, but in a lot of your videos, cooking I've been noticing is a thing that's like a whole. If you want to just talk about that a little bit,
I love cooking. Yeah. I do. I love it. I do it a lot. I'm kind of getting bored of it now. Just because you have to like do it. You have to like make food every day at the moment.
That's true.
I really miss just being able to like buy a sandwich or something. I mean, you get takeaways and stuff like that, but I don't know, like living somewhere I used to just be like, I'm hungry now, I'm just going to pop out, and you can have some food in your face within minutes was great. But no, I love it. I get quite obsessive about that, really, and reading up on it and learning the sort of science behind it all, really, like understanding the properties of things and starting to understand how they interact and what you can do with them.
Oh my god, it's so, when you talk about the science, you just reminded me something. I've been talking to my friends about this. Everyone in our generation is going to grow up thinking that their parents' cooking, well, some of you maybe, thinking your parents' cooking is particularly good. Have you two noticed a thing that if you get a bit geeky and study the science a little bit of how, like, acid and umami and salt and stuff works, when you talk to your parents about cooking, it's like it's such an easy way to improve your cooking, and the generation above us, in my experience, don't have half as much experience with it.
Yeah, sometimes. I think definitely, like, my mum is rubbish at explaining how to do stuff. So she will do that. Like, she'll be like, oh, put a bit of lemon juice or some wine in it or whatever, but she won't explain why. Like, only very recently I actually can decode her recipes, like, and work out how to use them, because they're irritatingly vague. Like, one of them was like for a sort of sausage bread, which was like this sort of like lots of cooked sausages with onions and tomato, and then like the bread kind of folded over in a lattice way, and it's sort of like something you have sliced up, kind of cold meat pastry thing. But a recipe starter just said make an enriched dough, and that was all of the instruction for like how to do the bread part of a thing that is ostensibly bread. But yeah, it was the first time where I looked at it and was like, yeah, okay, I'll do that. And it's like, right, for years of just being like, this isn't a recipe, this is a puzzle.
To kind of circle back on what both of you said in that, to go back to what you were saying, Quinns, I'm not white, so my mom knows how to. Okay, I'm kidding.
What do you mean? You got to lay this out for me.
So as far as my mom, and everyone says this, but my mom is actually an excellent cook, especially with Korean cuisine. But it's funny how you mentioned my recipes. She just goes, oh, I don't know, you just get a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and you just kind of you do it, and then
Yeah.
it's like, no, please, I need to write this down. Like, I need to record this in some capacity. And she's gotten better about it, but I think it all.
And the problem is, I'm getting like that now though. The more you understand it, the more like I don't really use recipes anymore. I might sometimes. I've been using recipes for baking because
very precise.
It's like kind of a science, and I don't really understand it enough yet to go kind of off-piste. Although there was a patch where I tend to do like batch cooking where I might go into the kitchen and cook like 2 or 3 meals at once. And I do remember one day just trying to bake a cake whilst doing that, and I'd kind of just gone into autopilot and then realized when I put it into the oven, I was like, you didn't follow a recipe for that, you just like put some stuff together, and it's like, yeah, it did not come out well. It's like you can't just by eye just chuck some stuff in, and but everything else you kind of can.
My mom often describes it in ratios, right? It's not necessarily like a set, like you use exactly this much, but it's like, I don't know, if you use this, then use this much of this about. It doesn't have to be exact as long as the proportions and ratios are about right. I mean, she also has like a PhD in food science, which I'm sure maybe like that might have, that'll maybe do it.
My comment earlier really couldn't have been better placed, could it? That's great.
So yeah, but I don't know. I think with her stuff, it's very good.
I do love getting into that, like nerding out on that stuff though, and realizing how things work, and it's very satisfying when you then kind of apply that knowledge, and I think a lot of what puts people off cooking is the fact that you can quite easily stumble onto recipes, especially when there's like popular recipe books. Like Ottolenghi is a really good example. I don't know if that's so big and really known in the US, but that's definitely something in the UK that middle-class wankers such as myself talk about a lot.
Say that again?
Some of those recipes are really simple. Ottolenghi? His most famous book is Plenty, I think. They're really good recipes. Like
it's Plenty really is all about. It's a book of vegetarian cooking where when you make it, it feels like a astounding substantial meal. Like
cool.
Vegetables are plenty if you know what you're doing.
Yeah. No, I'm looking you up.
And those recipes are like great, don't get me wrong, but some of them are quite easy, some of them are a big faff, and often they will hinge on recipes which most people might not have just knocking around, which means it's great if you're going to go out and do this stuff, but I think for a lot of people it's like that a lot of the time. You get to a recipe and you go down and there's something you haven't got, and that's enough to be like, oh well, I can't make that. But the wonderful thing is you don't have to be that good at cooking before you start to, like, once you know what these things are, you can just work it out. You'd be like, all right, well, I don't have any of that, but I can put, if you understand like what the role of that ingredient is in the meal, it's really easy to replace stuff.
Sure.
And there's a book actually by a baker called Dan Leppard, who's great. He's got a book called Short and Sweet that I'm loving at the moment, and it's just broken into like bread, pastries, cookies, cakes, little sweet things, and pies and stuff. But each of the chapters, before he gets to the recipes, he literally just breaks down the components of what these things are made of and explains the different things you can use for them and how that will affect the food and why you do stuff. And it's just amazing. Just be like, hey, it's cakes. It's like fats, and talks about butter, and then talks about lard, and talks about oil, and talks about all the different things they do and how you can interchange them. And just by reading that, it's like way better than just reading a recipe, because you just then go, oh, I get it now. Like, it all makes sense.
Yeah. And I think that's a sign. I have a friend who's a very good cook, and I think it's a sign where you don't have to follow a recipe, because just from experience, right? After cooking so much, oh, this is a replacement for this, or I can add more of this and it'll taste better. But I think honestly, it's that's part of what makes pursuing any hobby deeper, more fun. It's like I think when a lot of people, when you start out, it's like, hey, what are like let's say we talk about board games, right? And you go, okay, what are the board games that everybody recommends? And then you play all those, and you go, okay, now I'm going to sort of discover it on my own. And you develop your own taste, and you develop your own expertise on what you like. And, that I think that's always what makes any sort of, new hobby or new interest more satisfying, is when you don't need to rely. I mean, you still take recommendations and stuff, of course, but it's like you have a stronger sense of what you like and what you are able to do just through experience, which I find very valuable.
It's really nice in board games as well. One of the things I always say about them is that, creatively speaking, they are a lossless medium, which is a super wanky sentence. But what I mean is, whatever the designer designs is what you get in the box. And that's not true of video games. That's not true of movies. You know, those things pass through so many pairs of hands. And there's so many compromises and you know, decisions and exciting creative moments and failures along the way that what you get is probably not what was intended. But with board games, what the designer wants to make is what you end up playing. And so you just, I don't know, it's really nice to feel like you get to know designers in that way.
Yeah.
And I think we've been doing Shut Up and Sit Down now for long enough that Matt and I feel like differently connected to different designers.
And it's always lovely. We're lucky in our position that we get to meet a lot of these designers eventually. And it's
and then you
really
understand the games better.
Yeah, you kind of meet them and suddenly it all clicks into place. And it's the final piece in the puzzle of like, what's the designer intending? And then you're like, yeah, okay, yeah, this is you.
Yeah,
And often the best designers, you meet them and they are just reflections of their own games in a really cool way.
And speaking, let's kind of wrap it up here. I thank you very much for taking the time. But speaking of board games, I highly recommend Shut Up and Sit Down. Where can so everyone go check that out? But where can people find both of you?
Well, Shut Up and Sit Down is on YouTube. It's got a channel that's called Shut Up and Sit Down. We have a podcast that's on all good podcast players that's called Shut Up and Sit Down, the podcast. And it's like the video show, but we talk about bad games as well. And we stream on Twitch, on twitch.tv/Shut Up and Sit Down. Every Tuesday, you can see Matt and friends playing a digital board game, which is to say, not an ideal board game, but we have a lot of fun.
And are you guys on the social medias at all, or
Matt? Do you want to?
Well, I mean, plug
your socials.
I guess we are like, it's like in terms of like our Shut Up and Sit Down stuff. It's just all like it's all just called Shut Up and Sit Down. Like, I mean, Quinns has sort of mostly given up Twitter, which I applaud. I'm on it a lot, but I mean, it's mostly just me. Getting angry at our government. So I mean, if people are angry at the UK government, then they can follow me on Twitter. But if they follow me on Twitter expecting me to talk about board games, then yeah, they're not really going to get much of that there. We've got quite a good pipeline for that already. Sure. So I tend to just vent all of the bad gas.
Especially in these times. But let's end on a positive note. Thank you very much, you guys. Like this has been really fun. I really enjoyed talking to you, and I would love to have you on again. This was a lot of fun, and again, big fan of your guys' work. So thank you very much for taking the time.
Oh, thank you very much. You too. I'm looking forward to it. Is there any update about the cow stuff? Any cow things?
No. Stay tuned, I guess.
It's fine. Yeah. It's fine. I'll keep staying tuned, and eventually there will be cow stuff.
Hey, maybe Matt and I can watch Chihaya Furu and Kaiji and then get back to you and we can do like a book club talking about cool anime.
Honestly, even if it's recorded or not, I would genuinely love to hear, because I have never struck out with Chihaya Furu. Everyone I've recommended it to has loved it. I would love to hear your thoughts on either. So
I'll check it out.
Hit me up. But otherwise, thank you guys.
Welcome.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.